Hi, folks. My name is Jessica Creane. I've got like a more formal introduction of myself that I will race through because I'm uncomfortable talking about myself. But I wanted to do quick intros because I missed yesterday and maybe you all know each other really well. Andrew, Caro, Kate.
I'm Graham.
Hi, Graham.
Look, Dan.
Hi, Dan. Hi, Mackenzie.
Josh.
Hi, Josh. Hi, Zach. Okay, great.
They're all werewolves, and they will kill you in a moment's notice.
They can try. I have 2 broken fingers, so come at me. All right, so we're going to talk about a little bit about vulnerability and intimacy in play today. Please interrupt me at any time. I'm not precious about this. I'm really excited to be in a small group talking about things. Also worth noting that the internet is here. I don't know who or anything or what, but like, hello, internet. Send questions later, I guess. So we've got a couple parts for today. I'm not married to getting through all of this, just FYI. We have an interactive portion at the end, which based on sessions this morning, I will hazard a guess we won't get to. We'll find out. So there's a couple done things I want to share about the things that I've been making, and then an undone thing, which is the interactive, scary thing for me. So this is me. I'm all of these things, and I'll talk a little bit more about this in a second, but I do a lot of experiential and immersive design, a lot of game design, a lot of interactive play-based design, and I am definitely chaotic good. Don't let anybody tell you differently. So this is me as a little kid. I started out as a theater kid. This is basically because we're talking about intimacy and vulnerability, and I feel like you should know a little who I am, at the very least, so that I can ask you a lot of questions later about who you are. I've always been a risk taker. I started a high wire club as a kid. I don't know, some adult took that photo and didn't just grab me down. I'm really grateful for that. This is the first game I made. What's up? It's great. It's so good. Let me tell you, it's a flawless game and nothing is pointless on that board. As I grew up, I started getting into more traditional theater. I worked on and off Broadway and was directing new works and finding it really exciting and still had nothing to do with games. Like, despite doing this, I played very few games as a kid that I didn't make up with my friends. I went back to grad school because I felt like something was like missing in my life and I didn't know what it was. And in my last semester of grad school, I sort of happened upon a game design class, a history of games class. And that professor changed my life. I'm intensely grateful to him and forever will be for helping me put the pieces together that all of these feelings that I had around plays, where there was this break between those who get to play and those who don't get to play, didn't have to exist. And that's what games are for. And so I've been trying to marry the beauty of storytelling in theater and the things that I love about the community around theater with interactivity and gameplay and all of the space that games leave for us to be ourselves and bring ourselves for years now doing this. This is my happy space. So these are a couple things that I've created. These two I will talk about in just a minute in a little bit of detail. And this is sort of some of the more of the work that I've been doing in the last few years. So I work with the National Park Service on climate change games, and I did a TED Talk, which you're welcome to watch if you want to hear me talk about velociraptors. And a couple of these things, again, I want to go into a little bit more detail about, and I currently teach game design at CUNY City Tech. I think that's hilarious that this exists. That's the only reason that I put up this particular photo, the hubris of CUNY. And also I teach at Drexel University. I do love CUNY, but damn. Anyway, this is sort of how I think about a lot of the work that I do. I identify it as plays because it is both play and plays. It sort of takes the structures of gameplay, the freedoms in storytelling and emotions, like thoughtful emotions of performance, and the idea that we can transform ourselves in community, doing the things that we love and the things that are really scary. And so I sort of combine these things with the structures of playing with identity, interactivity, and immersion. That's a lot of just like maybe word salad. So again, please feel free to ask questions now or later, or just absorb. This is something that I would really love to credit, and I just texted my friend who told me about this weekend. I was like, who came up with this structure? And she hasn't gotten back to me yet, so I don't know. This isn't me, though. You should know that. But I thought it was really beautiful that when we're entering, she's a social worker, and so she was talking about this framework for when we are talking about the things that make us feel vulnerable or might make us feel vulnerable or that are intimate for us, that we want to be pushing into the unknown. We want to be exploring our own boundaries of identity. But the only way to do that safely is if we stay inside of this personal care bubble. That one day it might be this big, another day it might be this big, but we should keep taking our own temperature over the course of that. I don't anticipate this particular workshop jumping too much outside of this space, but it's still good to keep in mind. So I think this is a really beautiful framework, and I've been thinking it through and will continue to think it through. And I will get citations for anyone who is interested in it as soon as I hear back from Katie DiPiero. So this is my bubble today. I'm an oversharer. Hello. First and foremost, I'm really excited to be here today. I've been really hyped about this conference, and it's already felt so good this morning. I missed all of yesterday. Two is that there's been a change in format over the last couple of days. And so I had a really embodied workshop planned for us. And then I lightly panicked when I was like, it's going to be online too. And then I'm going to have to talk to those people also and asking them to do vulnerable things in the room. And that's not going to work. I don't know them. There's too much consent. I can't do it in 45 minutes. And so this is a very different thing. And so I was trying to sort of sit with this question of why is the change in format freaking me out? And really, it's just fear. It's just always fear of the unknown for me. Not always, but often. And so I've been sitting with this question of like, the fear really here is that the talk that I want to give, the things that I care about don't belong here in the space of learning, or that I don't belong here. So that's my uber transparency around the fact that my imposter syndrome and perfectionism have been kicking up a storm this week. And it's also been tamped down a lot by the joy of being here right now. I've also had a playtesting block. And so I've been hyping myself up to like do something new. And that's really hard. And so that's the space that I've been in, is just trying to like navigate those things. So those are the spaces where I'm feeling deeply vulnerable at the moment, just standing here in front of you beautiful humans. I'm also coming from a weird weekend. This is just too much information, but I'm going to share it anyway. I had a loss in the family this week. I've had some major partnership upheavals over the course of the last month. My father died a few years ago. It was his birthday, and there was a lot of grief that came on top of that in the last couple of days. I've been in transit for like 5 days straight. Sleep has not been a thing, and work fires have been raging. And so I'm coming at this from the space of like, there's so much going on right now. And I think I mentioned that partially because I think it's important to take a temperature of where we're at, but also because this kind of stuff, I don't always make time for within my classrooms. And I'm much better at it within games and theater. And so I'm holding myself accountable for making sure that even in spaces of 45 minutes of talking, that there's at least a little bit of like, hey, emotions are present in this space. So that's why this is here. And then there's a deeply asymmetrical check-in going in here. I'm doing a lot of checking in, and you were doing 0 checking in. So I want to just take 30 seconds, if you want to join me, just taking a deep breath and seeing if you're holding any tension in your body. And if it feels good, to see if you can breathe into that spot or 1 or 2 of those spots and release it. Take 1 more breath if you'd like. All right. I noticed my legs were shaking. Hey, folks. Okay. Here are some things we're going to talk about. These are 4 projects that I'm going to run through fairly quickly. Stop me at any time. This first one is a project that is exploring vulnerability through saying hello to new people. So this is something that I co-designed with one of my collaborators, Amy Hua, and this is a game that we made for South by Southwest this year, where we were running a session, a small agency meetup session, where folks have to talk to other people. I don't know if we have any introverts in the group, but sometimes saying hello to people is a big deal. Hey, what's up? So this is a game that we made to just explore the possibility of creating some different structures around that. It's pretty simple. This is what the board looks like when it's done. This is what it looks like in the beginning. So folks will essentially come in, they grab a board, and they try to find someone who meets one of these different criteria. When they find them, they scratch off this little holographic thing with the person that they found, and they have a deeper question to talk through with that person. And then if they did make it through a whole board, or if they didn't, we were pretty generous about this, we made little stickers with sloths on them that would account for whether or not they had won or lost the game. So what we found was that most people didn't finish the game. And that was a really good thing, because there's actually quite a bit here. And this question of like, what constitutes sophisticated leadership is enough for a 60-second small meetup session all on its own. But most people played, almost everyone played. And so that was pretty encouraging. And so we just found this like beautiful little game. I have no strong like, and here's what made it great or terrible. I'm just offering this up as kind of an example of like the lightest of structures that can help us to slide into intimacy. It gives people permission to say hi to each other. I can tell you, I'm sure you've been in spaces where those things just don't quite get accounted for. This is an imperfect system, but just creating permissions to go up to people are huge, 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 huge. And so this is the permission. This whole game is just permission. It's permission to say hello and permission to walk away because you have a thing to accomplish, and it's to fill out this board. So at any point, you can stay and talk, or you can bounce. And it sort of mitigates that weird conference thing of like, it's been so awesome to meet you, and I have a call to make. And then you see them 10 minutes later on the other side of the room talking to somebody else, right? So it's that like mitigates for that human being desire to be polite. Most of what I do, however, is not in the conference space. It is in the immersive theater space. And so I want to talk about two to three of the projects that I'm working on. One of them, this one's done. This one's very done. But this is a piece called Chaos Theory, which was my first immersive theater piece. It's about chaos theory. It's about the ways that we experience chaos in our lives. And this is the last game. Excuse me. These are all things that are fairly high lift tasks for audience members to do. This is the last thing they do after like 8 other games. Some people ended up here. I'll skip ahead here a little bit. As a result of this game, some of these things happened. People ended up calling people they hadn't talked to in 3 years. They adopted pets after leaving the show. At least 4 people got tattoos. A couple of people shaved their heads. People have fallen in love. They talk to me about it still, which I find to be absolutely delightful. They booked flights to, I think, Bali during the show, a father and a daughter. But these are all things that they wanted to do anyway. But the things that they felt really tender around and didn't have permission to do, because so much of intimacy and vulnerability is about like, what can I do? There's a block and it's invisible and we don't quite know what it is, or we think it's this one thing and actually it's this other thing. And so the balance that I was trying to strike within this piece was, how can we use social pressure to do some really beautiful things and have it not feel terrible to do what you want to do, or not have people waking up the next morning like, shit, right? To the best of my knowledge, those things didn't happen. Doesn't mean that it didn't happen. I haven't heard about it, and I try to check up. There's a couple things I want to talk about within this specifically. One is that it started with my own vulnerability. I was not kidding about the velociraptors. I've had a fear of dinosaurs my whole life. And so this piece started with, how do I confront my own fears? And for me, it was making a whole show talking about dinosaurs, amongst other things. I also got completely naked in this piece, which is important to mention because modeling vulnerability is a really big part of empowering others to do scary things. I quickly find myself giving talks and performances thinking, what am I doing that scares me in here? Because if I'm not doing anything, how can I ask anyone else to do this? And I find this in myself as a professor also. If I'm feeling too comfortable, it means that my students are probably feeling too comfortable. If I'm not challenging myself, I'm not bringing my whole self to this process. So for me, vulnerability is velociraptors. But this is a process of abstraction. I think we've seen a lot of sort of simulations in the space of immersion and intimacy and learning, and they are these really light layers over reality. And I tend to take a way further abstraction from reality. What chaos theory is essentially like a TED Talk to lecture on chaos theory that ends up with me getting naked for a good 45 minutes and the rest of the audience doing, some of the things that we were talking about before. So it takes a pretty big jump and really follows the course of the character that I play and her process of falling in love and falling out of love and contending with societal norms and how do I show up as a female scientist in this space. And so it's really story. It's really story. And it is story. It is my own story and my own sharing. It is not autobiographical. It is me as a performer that provides the permissions for people to do these things that fall into this camp for them. So this is just one of the pieces that I've worked on and think about. I'm going to jump to another one now. I know that's a lot of vagaries around a lot of very specific things, so feel free again to ask questions at any point. This is a more recent piece that I created called Know Thyself. It's a pop-up museum of philosophy. The best way I've come to think about it is like if you walk into an art museum, instead of seeing art along the walls, you would see games. And they all look like that. They're these big black boxes, and you can't see in them. And then I am your tour guide, and I will take people along this tour through the museum. And we play games based on the choices that people make. And the choices that they make will guide us to the next exhibit rather than another exhibit. At the beginning, everyone picks up a box with a philosophical quote on it that speaks to them, and it is an externalization of their mind over the course of the piece. And so what players will do, the games in the piece are essentially played in pairs, and so you end up bonding pretty strongly with one other person. So you can see that they each have their little boxes here. I'm going to jump around in slides a little bit here. They fill out a form in the very beginning of the piece that asks them these questions. And so the first thing that they do upon entering the space, knowing that it is a museum, is to fill out a little questionnaire about where they're at. So they've got this little self check-in, and then they're instructed to roll it up and put it in their box. So nobody sees it but them. And over the course of the piece, we go through all of these different exhibits, and they end up writing notes for themselves and putting it into their box based on these games. They also write down observations, things they've learned, et cetera, about the person that they're playing with, and they put them in their partner's box. And so without them looking at it. So this is accumulation of self-knowledge, knowledge about themselves from somebody else who's going through this fairly intimate experience with them about language and philosophy. And so they have this secret information in there as well as the information that they know, much like our own minds. We know ourselves-ish. There's a lot in there. And so I wanted to give one example of one of these games. The piece itself, I find, opens up a lot of vulnerability for folks. And so this is a game called Banal Bingo. I made 2 Hannah Arendt games, if we have any philosophy nerds in the room. Hannah Arendt is a philosopher who sort of made her work based on her studies of the Holocaust and her questioning of how is it that this could happen? How do we deal with this? And basically her philosophy was that the bulk of the really big evils in the world aren't huge, major genocides per se. They are the small accumulations of evils that allow those things to happen. Having plastic water bottles and what's up, y'all? All of these kinds of things and more. And so she was really interested in what she called banal evils, the things that we lightly register or don't register at all as being evil, or we think we can do this one thing, and all the small things don't matter so much as the accumulation of them. So Banal Bingo asks participants, this is later on, this game would never crop up first in the experience. This is after they've gotten to know each other quite a bit. Folks have these little metal tokens that they grab from a big pile with their partner, and they put them onto their board in any order. It could be things that they have done, banal evils that they've done, banal evils that they haven't done, it doesn't matter. So all of these little metal tokens have a banal evil on them. And those all come from myself and my collaborators. And then they have to write 4 of their own that are banal evils that they have partaken of in the last 2 years. And so one for me might be like, bought a plastic water bottle today, right? So those are all things that get put on there. And then they look at their board, and then they slide it over to their partner. And their partner will flip over anything that they haven't done. And they have to leave face up any banal evil that they have engaged with in the last 2 years. And so then there's usually a little time where people are trying to figure out, did I do that thing? What are the semantics of this? I don't know. And during that time, if you're done, you just stare at your board. And that's all part of the game. It's just taking that time to contend with the things that have been a part of your life. And then they slide their board back to their partner, and their partner gets to see which of those things they have identified as something that they have been a part of. And so there's this shared intimacy of like, shit, me too, that often comes up in that moment where you feel not alone. It somehow manages to minimize the shame and also activate the awareness around the things that we do. So this is one of the games. The other Hannah Arendt game is way eviler, just FYI. That one is based on, a lot of these games are sort of based on kids' games and existing games. The other one is based on Truth or Dare. Yeah, so it's banal truth or dare. And so like one of the dares is, go to the bathroom and turn the faucet on and leave it on through the end of the game. Yeah, people have some feelings about it. It's a terrible thing to ask. I have feelings about it. Like I get a little pit in my stomach that like, I wrote that card. I did that. And sometimes people do it. And then the rest of the group is like, right? Or someone else is like, I gotta go pee real quick. It's nothing to do with the game. And then they'll shut the water off. Or people will, more often than anything, they'll go to the bathroom, turn the water on, turn it right off, come back and be like, yeah, I did it. They just lie. Which like, yeah, cool, I like it. But also the candor isn't there, right? They're not being candid about the fact that they just didn't do the thing. They didn't play by the rules. They didn't play by the rules and they don't even have permission to own it. And that's baked into the games too. For that game in particular, it is very important that the game does not provide that out. The only way out of that experience is to choose it, to choose to break the rules. And so after that experience, this is part of like much of this, the experience of Know Thyself. But after that particular experience, participants are asked to close their eyes after like writing a little note about themselves and their partners. They close their eyes, and then I'll ask them to raise their hand if they played by all of the rules. And people will raise their hands, and I'll say, open your eyes, and they get to see who played by the rules. And that's the first acknowledgement that you can break the rules. And then I'll bring their hands down, close your eyes again, raise your hand if you broke any of the rules. And open your eyes if you broke any of the rules. I've never seen it more than one person, which is pretty powerful. But at that point, everybody knows the rules of the game are meant to be broken. And so there's just these little ways to encourage saying no to the rule sets. And that's Hannah Arendt's philosophy. Right? We have to say no to the structures in place, and it has to come from us. And that's never going to be easy. And there's really no way that I have found to teach it within a clear framework. It has to come from making mistakes first. And ideally, that happens in a really safe and supportive space. Again, this doesn't happen first thing first. This is after they've been through some laughs. They've already played a game called Trolley Problem Slap, where they've slapped a bunch of things when like sent them off into oblivion, where they have to contend with their biases. It's fun, it's fast-paced, this is slower. So there's some real design thinking around how to craft all of these emotions. But for me, the reason that I'm mentioning a lot of this a little bit in detail is that for me, it is that crafting, it is that storytelling, it is taking that time to say for 75 minutes, we're in a really artistic space. We're in a highly abstracted space from reality, and yet it is so deeply tied to who you are right now that there aren't really any clear breaks in those things. They're not playing a character. They didn't design themselves coming in. They came in and they filled out a form, right? This told them their role. This told them who they are today. And over the course of the rest of the piece, we're just more deeply exploring what that looks like right now, with the understanding that that is all going to change. And ideally, that is going to change, and it will change with the support of your partners. And the last thing I would mention is at the end, this is huge spoilers here. So I don't know, plug your ears if you don't want to hear it. At the end, they have to make a decision about whether or not they're going to keep their own box. One partner, what is your name? Denny? Yeah. Denny, so if you and I were playing together, we would each have a little box that we've been accumulating a lot of information about ourselves and each other over the course of the piece. Mine holds some secrets about me from the beginning, right? Maybe things I want to share, maybe not. I will never be forced to share it. You will never be forced to share it. That is important. I will not trick the audience. It will always come back and bite us in the ass, right? And it's not nice. It's just not a good thing to do. We don't want to upset people in that way because then the anger takes over everything. And this is all tender, tender stuff. So I might be, long story short, we might have reached a place where I am in a position of power where I get to decide if I want to give this box to you, at which point I have to give it up completely, and then you get to do whatever you want with it. You can't speak, you can't tell me what you're going to do, but you can open it, you can read everything about me, everything that I've been writing, and you can read everything that I've written about you. All the information goes to you. Or I can decide that I want this. This is mine. I'm not sharing this for whatever reasons. In which case, I get to take your box. But I can't look in it. I can destroy it. So your secrets will always be safe, and you're not going to know actually which one is going to happen. If I do give it to you based on philosophy and stuff and longer stories and things, I have made a choice to choose a new identity. I don't get to be me anymore in a traditional sense. And again, huge spoilers here. If that is the case, I'm going to go off in the other room with the tour guide, also me. I'm two me's right now. And I'm going to be told that I'm going to be entering into a new life. Thank you for my generosity in giving myself to you and all of that. And also now I can go ahead and start deleting all the contacts on my phone. Some people do it. And then they have a really interesting time because you can't actually delete numbers. They're just going to be getting a lot of, Unknown numbers, yeah. People have taken it to very, very different degrees, but it's all this idea of like, what is it like to enter out into the world again as like tabula rasa? At what point do we get to be a blank slate? And in what ways? When can we rewrite ourselves? And how do we rewrite our own philosophies? Anyway, that is Know Thyself in a nutshell. I want to mention one other game in this, which is just like it's silly, but it's deep. This is the second game that they play. This is one of the first games I ever made. It's called Schrodinger's Cat. The gist of it is like there are two teams. It's the prisoner's dilemma. This team gets to decide if the cat you're going to put a cat in a bunker, and you're going to decide whether or not the cat puts a scuba mask on that is attached to like a little air tank or not. And this group is going to decide whether there's cat poison in the tank or oxygen in the tank. And if there's cat poison in the tank, there's oxygen in the bunker. If there's oxygen in the tank, there's cat poison in the bunker. The cat might die or the cat might live. That's the gist. So you've already made these like life or death choices with each other, but it's all for like a stuffed animal cat, which is very cute. People have a lot of feelings about it. But that's like, this is early on, right? You're making decisions for others. And you like kind of have some control over it, but not really. You don't really know what anybody else is thinking. So this buildup of agency happens over time. So I just wanted to give that as like this is what the build looks like. That's where we get to. This is kind of where we start. Lighter than this is mid-range. One of the last times I ran this piece, the piece ran for about 6 months in New York. As the things are leaving, there's like a full gift shop for the piece, and there's like a full last exhibit for boxes that are donated to the museum that you can take a look through. So this woman had been very sort of like stoic over the course of the experience. And I remember like just checking in with her a couple of times being like, I don't know if I think she's with me, but I'm not sure if she cares about this. And so she said goodbye to me on her way out. I didn't know her, and she was like, thank you. And then she stopped in the doorway and she turned around and she said, how do you sleep at night? And I was like, God damn it. She hated it. How did I like put this drivel up and charge money for it? And so I kind of joked it off. I was like, not very well, actually. I'm kind of an insomniac. And then gave her my card. And so she ended up emailing me the next day and was like, hey, just to clarify, the things that people write in these boxes are wildly intimate. How do you read them and take that in? And I usually don't read the boxes. I don't read them all. And that day, for some reason, I had read them. I had read them on the way in. I was like, I wonder what people are saying from last show. And a couple of people were talking about the way that they weren't sure how to exist in the world, or that they could exist in the world the way that it stands. And that was the thing they were sure about, was that they were unsure about how to be authentic here and now. And it got pretty dark. I'm going to spare you some of the darkness. And then I was like, yeah, of course she asked that. Of course she asked that, because we all kind of think about that. And there's not a lot of space to be able to talk about those things within ourselves or outside of ourselves. And that stayed with me. And we ended up talking for quite a while about that. But yeah, I think that like these spaces, when we give ourselves permission to think deeply, are pretty vital and really hard to craft. Last but not least, I wanted to just give a quick touch on a project that I'm working on now, which is a piece called R&J. I've been working on it for a long time. This piece is taking me forever, but our teams are awesome. It's a 2-player mobile experience. It's essentially, it takes the story of Romeo and Juliet, and if your eyes are rolling at like more Shakespeare, you are correct. Good job, well spotted. And you play through, sorry, what was your name again? Devin. So Devin, if you and I are playing this game together, we don't know who each other are, but we're playing through the story of Romeo and Juliet together on our phones over the course of 5 days. So we're like making wedding vows and getting poisoned and a bunch of other stuff. But also people have fallen in love as I've been playtesting this. And so there are, I think, like an unreasonable metric that I now hold for myself is like, I will now forever create things where people fall in love for everything. But I also have a pretty vast definition of love. And so the thing that we've been playing with is like, how do we create this intimacy that allows people to experience love that isn't necessarily romantic and isn't necessarily something that can't just be an ephemeral, beautiful bubble of time, because love, in addition to like crushes, love lifts. Hot take, happy to have that discussion. And so how do we do a thing that lifts without doing a thing that crushes? and still has that depth of experience to it. So those are the things that we've been playing with recently. And a lot of it is really sort of this balance too of like, what structures do we need in order to have permissions to play? How do we keep people safe in this process of anonymity? And how do we leave a lot of space for people to be doing the thing of exploring themselves over the course of that process? Who am I in love? Who am I when I'm having an intimate experience with a stranger? And then part of that is sort of like this low-key, subtle, unclear if this is going to pan out kind of thing of like, what is it like to be going through this experience and be walking around and thinking to yourself, like, could it be them or them or them? And can that just be a thing that exists in the world? Where we all get to kind of walk around feeling like, could I love them? I feel like I could love them. I could love everyone. And so it's just sort of having this way to open up our hearts a little bit towards strangers. All in the works. Let me know if you want to play test some stuff. But yeah, so that's like the short side of the kinds of stuff that I work on. The next thing up is the undone thing. So I wanted to pause here for just a second and see if there were any questions or discussions or if you want to do a weird thing. Okay. All right, cool. This is a censored block at the moment. What we're launching into is a thing that like feels, this is a scary thing for me. I think I've resisted talking about this game in a number of ways for a long time, and so it's wildly not finished. And I've experimented in a couple of different ways. I have found it to be really interesting. In my experience, it's a pretty intimate game. You can opt out. That's all I'll say for now. What I would like for us to do, I think, if you are game for it, is that you are going to create the before play structure. Part of why this feels dangerous to me is because normally what I would do is say onboarding first and safety first, always, 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 always. And right now what I'm asking you to do is I'm going to show you the rules and I'm going to ask you to create these things. And then I'm going to show you what I've got and we're going to see if there are mismatches, things I've missed, things that you think are super important, all of this. We're just going to talk about it. In order to do that, I think it's useful to play the game. So I'm wondering if, I have the rules written out, but I'm wondering if, no pressure, if someone wants to volunteer for a totally unknown experience where we're not going to touch, but we'll come close. Does anyone want to give it a shot with me? Fight it out. We actually probably could do 3 people if you both want to come up. 3 is great. 3 is a totally reasonable number for this. I think I've run it with like up to 8. Mackenzie, hi. Is it okay? I had COVID this month. I don't have COVID now. Is it okay to have my mask off around you right now? Yes. Okay, great. So here's the game in a nutshell. It's essentially, I'm showing you all my adaptation games. I swear to God, I can create mechanics on my own. It's essentially Simon Says. But what we're going to do is find a way to relate our bodies to each other. And we're going to say that for our purposes right now, it's going to be elbowed down. Is that all right with you?
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. So I'm going to make the first move, and I'm going to do this. And then you're going to use one arm or both to relate to my hand. You get 1 move, and you're going to repeat my move first. So this is move 1.
Okay.
And then you're going to do 1 and add another. Great. And you're going to leave your hands right there. 1 and 2 and 3.
So then I repeat.
Yeah, starting from 1. And then you'll add 1.
Oh, yeah.
And we can pause there.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Mackenzie. So that's the game. It's pretty simple, right? But it's possible to play this also with whole bodies and touching. And so I've been running this in a variety of ways. Sometimes with partners, like romantic partners, sometimes with friends. I've also played it over like a long period of time. Like, what is it like to play this game slowly over the course of a day? And what it does is like builds up a ton of tension, right? That's the game. And so it's pretty vulnerable. Or it can be with different kinds of partnerships. So these are the rules during play. And I'm gonna do a quick cheat here for a second. Yeah, that's an example round. Great. So I'm gonna leave these up for a second. And what I would love for you to do is take, oh boy, 5 minutes in groups of 3 to 4. And I'm happy to divide you if that's easier. You're gonna write down all the things that you think should be talked about ahead of time or done ahead of time or whatever ahead of time. You're gonna onboard this, all right? I'm gonna group this just for simplicity here. We're gonna say 4. Nice job, side of the room. 4. Do y'all want to be broken up? You're good? Okay. Let's say 5 then. Okay. Okay, 5 minutes. And I'm going to let you know when we're at 4 minutes so you can pick a sharer. Someone who's fast. 1 minute.
Something that city. Sure about the context of that and collaborative. The reason I never read right, it's not so stressed. I don't know that. Right.
All right, and we'll call it here. So I think what the most efficient thing to do is for me to show you what currently exists, which is a draft version of the onboarding. And then you can tell me all the things where you're like, hell no, or like, this would be way better. If you're comfortable doing that, of course. So this is what I've got so far. Take your time absorbing. When you're ready, I would love to hear what kinds of brilliant iterations y'all came up with. There's no way I nailed it. Yeah.
Things that we were thought about was there's an invitation that seems present in this for someone to feel as though there is a win state of the most moves in a row is good. And so iterating on that, like letting people know that maybe, you know, that that's not necessarily the desired outcome, that the intention of the outcome is to create connection, and therefore there's no shame in not achieving many moves in a row. And the goal instead is to be aware and notice what was occurring that made that difficult, might be helpful.
I love that. I love that. And that sits right in one of my like classic blind spots. I don't know if it's a blind spot if you know about it. Somehow it still feels that it is. Yeah. Yeah, of like, I want them to figure it out on their own. And this is exactly for moments like that. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Yeah, that also speaks to one of the things that interests me about it, which is that so much can be conveyed emotionally through movement. And yeah, and clarity around that is super important. Yeah, thanks.
Might be some pressure.
Love that. Absolutely.
Something about
That's a person who never experiences perfectionism. I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah. Yeah.
One thing that comes to mind for me is that I worry that sometimes there may be some hesitation around using a safety word, or kind of a intrinsic feeling that it's backing away from the expected play experience. So whether there might be a way to make that more of an intrinsic part of the experience where it doesn't feel like, not doing something, but is instead doing something else.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, absolutely.
Could there be like a safety gesture or something that models the mimicry of play that you can just alt play in a certain.
Yeah, keeping in the language. Yeah, the spirit of the game. Absolutely. Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of something akin to first person.
The chaos theory example? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Want to expand on something I was said, I didn't see you say it, but the idea of like the perfect replication of the moves. Just to expand on that a little bit, I think something to just kind of chill people out about that, because I'm thinking again about how my students would play it, and if you were off by like a millimeter, they start screaming. Because like there was one move, I think it was the third one that you proposed, where it was kind of like you rotated the hand and flipped it around. That changed during the game. The actual, like, how many times you rotated the hand, but the spirit, if you will, of the move was exactly the same. Somehow explaining the concept of the spirit of the move as opposed to the literal exactness.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And I have the added benefit of having play tested it a handful of times, and it always changes. And I've never heard anybody call anybody out, but I think like I've been playing around like theater and game folk. Like they're like, ooh, new rule. But I think that's super pertinent. And also that evolution is what makes the game better, I think. Is that those things change, or like all of a sudden, like it started out as like I started out this talk, I was like, I have a lot of feelings, everyone. And now I'm like, ooh, cool, we're good. And so the game does that too. Like sometimes it starts with like this might be a really quick move. And by the end, it's like we're paying attention to that movement and enjoying it. And so, yeah, I want to do some playtesting around that too. What is responsible for bolsters or dampens that over time effect? Yeah, Kara.
Something that is occurring to me just now as we're talking about it is that I can imagine playing this with a multiplicity of different partners and having someone be very kind of freeform about what they accept as a move and someone else being extremely rigorous.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's something really intriguing there about that sense of rigor, and that there's not a right or wrong in either being very rigorous or being very fluid, that both have merit and have like interest around them. So, even just like almost as a debrief for the game after, noticing when someone's especially rigorous or when someone's especially fluid, like could be very interesting.
Yeah, I think the thing also I'm just noticing also how much we're all talking about noticing. Yeah.
It feels kind of like a yes and improv dance, where it's something, I mimic it to make sure I understand, and then I give it back, and we kind of dance. That's I don't know if describing it like that would help, or if it becomes too prescribed.
That's super interesting. Yeah, me too. I'm curious too. And I think it's so hard to, there are plenty of beautiful games that do this, but in my opinion, not enough that are physical games that let us slow down. There's great speed movement games, or like great, like I'm moving, but I'm thinking games. And there's like, in the theater world, there are some gentler games, but I think not enough. Yeah, no, I'm just talking to my own passions. We're also over time, y'all. I'm so sorry. It's 1:50. Let's get us out of here. These are some takeaways that I wrote. I don't know if they're useful. You have your own takeaways. Take what you like. And it's been such a pleasure. Thank you all for being here. Please stay in touch. Thank you, thank you, thank you.